Hi everybody, Diane again here. We're going to get started on some of those holiday projects that we talked about in the last video. The one we're going to work on today is the pumpkin. It's going to look different from this pumpkin because what I did is I made this pumpkin as my sample, of course, to see what was going to turn out pumpkin size or template size wise. And so it worked out, and so I'm going to continue on making a pumpkin that has decorative stitches in each of these areas. And so after you get the template, and I'm going to give the template to Annette. She's going to post it on the website, and also for you individuals that like to come visit often, she'll also have one of these at the store so that she can also hand it to you if you so choose. But anyway, I'm going to just kind of show you. I drew the template myself, okay, and it's like you can see the paper I used. It was just like creating the center point and then folding it over. That way we have equal distance on the top as well as on the bottom, okay. And then what I did with it is I cut out 6 of the sections, 6 of these sections as such, okay, like this, as you're seeing. And then what I did is I fused some SF101 to the back side of it. I like the stability that the stabilizer creates, and so you may want to check with Annette or with Larry to get some of the stabilizer. They do have some in their store. You can buy a yard, 2 yards, or you can buy the whole bolt, but just give them heads up so that they can order it if necessary, okay? And then what I did is I took a piece of stabilizer. This is a tearaway stabilizer, and I placed it on top, or my pumpkin section on top of the stabilizer without fusing or anything like that. And then, well, before I did that though, I actually marked the center with the friction markers as well. So I determined the center of the top and the center of the bottom, drew a straight line to create that center line that I'm going to utilize when I do my stitches, okay? And so here we go. Putting my stabilizer behind it, and this gives it additional stability for when you're doing these decorative stitches, because you don't want your fabric to pucker. And so the stabilizer, the 2 layers of stabilizer really helps in that situation. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make sure we put a bobbin in our bobbin. So I purchased, or I have some of these bobbins for the FOF machine, so I put a pre-wound bobbin in there. That way I don't have to wind it, but if I wanted to wind it, I could definitely wind the bobbin with the same thread. Loaded, or threaded my machine. And before you thread the machine, make sure you start always with a new needle so that you get nice crisp stitches. Okay, so what I did is went under my optional feet stitches category, selected stitch number 4, okay? And like I said, again, if you need to know what foot to utilize or what that stitch is about, make sure you tap on your question mark right here and touch the stitch, and then it'll put that description right up there as to what it's all about and what foot you require to use, or optional feet. I'm sorry. Here, let's go back in there again because it kind of disappeared on when I selected it. So it's for French knots. It requires additional candid working foot, IDT system, part number 613-096, and so forth. And so put that foot on, say okay to this, and with that foot on and your IDT attached, then you're going to start at the top, place your pumpkin square right underneath, and then another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on my projection button right here. Okay, and what happens is it projects that stitch onto the fabric where I wanted to stitch. And it's also a guide. That's why we drew our line down the center. That's also, if you use the red line and center that red line on your drawn line with your friction pen, that'll be centered, you know, if you follow that right along that line. So I'm going to go ahead and press the down button. You can either use the way up button or you know, the highest position. This position lowers it. And so what happens is it's going to showcase that right down there. And I'm going to go ahead and start it out. And now what I'm going to do is just follow along that line that I drew. Okay? And this button right here, of course, as any of you POF owners know, starts the machine out. And you can also use your foot control, but I just use this one. You can also turn up your speed if you want to go a little bit faster. I like to set it like at a medium speed or so. That way, you know, if you need to adjust your positioning of your fabric, you can adjust the positioning of your fabric. And we're just going to let that stitch out right down the center of that pumpkin section. Look how nice these lines are too, these grid markings. I love it, you know. You know, there's never a question that you can't stitch a straight line any longer, because with these markings, you know, it's perfect placement at each and every time. And it's getting close to the bottom. What I'm going to do is stop the machine then. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the thread. Okay. Now, what I would do in this situation, I would go forward and I would use, since we have 6 of these sections we're going to have to use this stitch for, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to catch up with you after all 6 of them are stitched out. And I'll be right back in a second, okay? So go ahead, stitch them out, and then all 6, and then we're going to apply a different stitch to it. Okay. Okay, the next stitch we're going to utilize on each side of our candle wicking stitch will be located under, let's see, we're going to come back over here to your stitch category, and in here we're going to go over to, we're going to utilize the needle art. Going back to 3.4, and it's 1, 2, 3. It's a third one in, so it's number 3 under your subcategory 3.4. Go ahead, select that stitch. Okay, close out of it. You could also, if you choose to do it, make it wider or the length longer. In this situation, I'm going to let it be the way it is, that size, and so I'm going to just leave that go and close out of that category. Oop. There we go, it's right down the center. Now, one other thing that I can do as well, so if I wanted to flip this, so if I knew that this was the top of my pumpkin, I wanted the leaves or the stems to go in the other direction, I can flip it. Notice how they flip in accordance to my commands. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead, take the same section, and I'm going to use again my projection right here, and I'm going to place it. So I want that center line that I drew down the center 2 squares away from the red line, which is the very center of that stitch. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and lower my presser foot, okay, and I'm going to allow this stitch or this line right over here to go down on that drawn line. So when you're stitching this or you're trying to control where it goes, make sure your line is always perpendicular to that center drawn line. Now we're coming up close to the end, the opposite side where it's going to be completed. I'm going to do one more stem over here, and then after it completes, I'm going to stop the machine. Okay, and then just go ahead and cut your thread. Okay, see, now that's stitched up. Perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to flip it over because we're going to use the same side, but in order to do that, I also want to flip my design, or my stitch, my decorative stitch on the screen itself. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it so that it's reversed, because we've got the reverse side up. We're going to also utilize our projection again because we're going to start it up fresh. And I want the design to start at the very beginning of the actual formation of the design. So we're going to go ahead and click on this button right here. So what it does is it takes you back to the very beginning of that stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead, lower my presser foot. I think I'm pretty well set there. Looks good spacing wise. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this for this section. And what is going to happen is, after you completed this one, I want you to go ahead and complete the other 5 sections that you have stitched your candle wicking stitch on. That way you don't have to switch out feet. Oh, you know what? I should have switched out my candle wicking foot. Sorry, we should have done that earlier. So, okay, never too late. We're going to go ahead and do that. Oops. Raise this up. Okay. I forgot to do that, and that's okay because mistakes happen. The foot I'm going to use here, which I should have been using for the last pass, which you can also use. You can use your 8A foot or your open toe foot. This is the one I meant to put on there. So I am so sorry. So we're going to go ahead and put that on there. And it also uses the IDT system. So we're going to go ahead and put that on. Okay, there we go. Now we should be good to go. I like to move my threads to the back, and so forth. So we're going to lower our presser foot again. And this particular foot, like I said, was the open toe foot for the IDT system. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and repeat the same action. And, okay, that's what it looks like. Now, with the center line, one thing I also want to remind you, when you go ahead and iron this piece out, that line will disappear. Okay, so remove all your excess or little tails on your threads. Now, another thing I like to do with is I like to tear away that stabilizer on the back side. So when you're tearing it away, make sure you hold the stitch. So if some of your stitches are, you don't want to interfere or pull any of your stitches out. So I hold down the area where the stitch is so that you don't pull out that stitch. And so you're just going to tear away that stabilizer, tear away all your ends as well, because this was actually, you know, it holds that the stitch in place so that you don't get puckering and so forth. So you want to always make sure you use the stabilizer, but then at the end tear it away. Okay, and I'm just tearing away my ends as well. Normally when I do this, I have threads and stabilizer all over the place. So here we got a few extra stitches. I'm going to remove them. Okay. So you've ironed the section out, okay, and to remove that center stitch. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to change up our stitches. We're going to come back to straight stitch. So we're going to go back over to the utility section. Right here is utility. Select the first stitch because I just need to sew it all together, all of my pieces. So You know, you've probably done this where you've stitched all these out already, and so that's great. So now we're going to sew them together along the sides, okay? First thing we're going to do, though, we're going to turn over the top section about a half an inch or so and finger crease it to hold it down. This is going to create a little channel where we're going to gather the top section, okay? But before we do that, we're going to remember this time to change out my presser foot. Okay, attach your IDT system to it. Okay, and then what we're going to do to create that channel, I'm going to stitch across a little channel. It's going to be about a fourth, a little bit more generous than a fourth of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so across. So we're going to go ahead and lower that presser foot down, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch across, and I'm going to slow up the machine a little bit because that's a little bit too fast. Okay, so go ahead to create that channel. Do a tie off before and after, or reverse, you know, so that you can make sure that that's down, and then cut it. Okay. Okay. So we just made a little channel in there to create and to thread my needle through. Or a string it is. It's kind of heavier thread that goes through there, and it'll use it for gathering. So now that I have that done, and do that in all 6 of your sections as well, okay? And this will be the top of the pumpkin. Okay, throw those all away. Now this project turns into a crafty little project, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to sew the sections together. Okay, take that off. Right sides together. If you need to pin it, go ahead, put some pins in just to secure the area so that it doesn't slip on you. Okay, and then at this point, one thing I like to do is use this 1/4 inch seam with guide foot. It's one of my favorite feet for sewing with. Okay, so I'm going to remove the standard foot. It comes with all the machines. We'll put that right up there. And I'm going to attach this foot because we want a perfect 1/4 inch foot. Or 1/4 inch seam, I'm sorry. Okay, put your IDT system on again. Okay. Then we're going to start up here at the top. And I'm going to take a little bit less than a 1/4 inch foot because I don't want to close off my little channel up here, because I have to be able to string a cord through that. So we're gonna cut it a little bit shorter up here at this beginning. Okay, and then we're gonna eventually go down to the 1/4 inch size for our seam. So you can see how that fabric is just, you know, it's right next to that guide, and so that guide is going to maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and so we're just gonna, I'm going pretty slow here because we got a slight curve here, so I want to make sure that we maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And do make sure you remove all your pins before you stitch, you know, so that you don't damage your needle. Go ahead and reverse to reinforce that area. Okay, stop it and cut your seam. Okay. So we're going to do this with the other sections of the pumpkin. Okay, so right sides together. Okay, and make sure when you're sewing them together that your little your stitches on this second decorative stitch are going upward towards the top of the pumpkin. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and pin that together just to make sure it's all. I like to put one at the beginning and one at the top or at the bottom. That way it maintains that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. Lower your presser foot and okay, you can back stitch there. Oop, let's go back stitch here a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to make sure it comes out that you slide it out to that to the guide, your fabric or your two pieces of fabric that you're not embroidering but sewing together. You get down to the bottom, just reinforcement stitch, and then you're going to cut it. Okay, I noticed here that I forgot to sew across this top section. So we can do that right now to make sure that we create that channel. Okay. I'm going to lift that up a little bit and scoot it over. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and create that channel at the very top. Okay, and I'm going to cut that. Okay. Okay. Got our makings of a pumpkin here. Okay. Then the other sections, I already started to sew those together. So I removed the pin. Okay. And I'm just sewing my sections together still. Okay, let's cut it. Okay. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to finish up with our last section. And this is our final section, so it's joining the first section and the sixth section together to form that continuous shape that we need to make our pumpkin. Cut it off. Okay. Now, next thing you're going to do with this, because you've got these rounded edges, we're going to just clip to that seam. Okay, don't cut the seam, but just if you've got some pointed tip scissors like this, just clip just to the seam, but not through the seam. And I tend to do this about every inch or so because it makes the pumpkin shape, makes that seam form the pumpkin shape a little bit nicer. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just turn it right side out. Okay. You get to see the beginnings of our pumpkin here. Okay, so we're going to just clip those out, or form them out like that. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to take a large-eyed needle, such as this, okay, and I'm going to use a double thickness of my thread. So this is where the crafty portion of the project comes into play. We'll set that up there for the time being. Okay, and I'm going to double this over, something like that. I'm going to cut my thread. Okay, so both of the threads I'm going to thread through the eye of the needle. This is why you need a little bit heavier or larger eye on the needle to get both threads through. And it will work. Here we go. Got it through. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the bottom of the pumpkin. Okay, and with this, okay, I'm going to start at one of the seam locations. And I like to use a little thimble here too on my middle finger so that I can poke the thread through. And I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch. Here, let me just do this first. 1/4 of an inch through. And then since I have the loop on the other side, I'm going to pull or thread the needle through the loop, and it creates a knot so that it holds it really quite nicely. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch from the edge all the way around. So as you go, pull your thread through. And this is creating like a basting stitch, you might say, but it's a gathering stitch because I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to, and that's 1/4 of an inch from the top or from the bottom edge of the pumpkin. I must have taken maybe 36 inches of thread or so and doubled it up. Gently pull on your threads. Notice how it gathers the pumpkin. This is the bottom, so it's like it's not going to be as pretty as the top, but it'll still look nice. With this, now what you're going to do is you're going to, here, I need that thimble back again. I'm going to just go from one side to the opposite side, and what this is doing is it's tightening it up, and it's tightening as we create our little gathers. And you're going to continue with this process until it's a pretty sturdy bottom to it, and it's pretty well gathered together. That section. Now we're going to go ahead and start to form our pumpkin as such, like that, to make sure everything looks good. Opening out your seams inside. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to start filling our pumpkin. So I'm going to just, oops, bags are a little slippery. Normally I've got a cutting table that I set it on, but for the sake of filming, we have to improvise. So I'm just forming the pumpkin shape. See, now look at those stitches, how nice they show up. Okay, I'm going to set that down for a second. Okay. Now, the next part, this is the section where I told you we created these little channels on the top edge up here. And what I'm going to do is, I have this, it's called craft lace, but what it says on the back is it's waxed thread, okay? So it's really pretty thick, but it's a waxed thread, and it makes it a little bit more durable when you're pulling this top edge through. So what I'm going to do, go to the back side of the channel, and I've attached a yard or whatever, tied it to a safety pin, a small safety pin, like a safety pin about that size. Okay. So I tied it to the end right there so that it stays in there and follows through and feeds it through the channel. Okay, let's see. Which one do I want? We'll do this one. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So turn it to the back side, or kind of turn it over to the back side like I'm doing here. Have to get it in that channel to begin with. Okay. And then what you're going to do, okay, you're just going to feed it through that channel. Okay. I made my channel a little bit too narrow, so it's taking a little bit more to feed it through, but I'm sure that you'll do just fine with yours, because in the directions I told you, make it larger than 1/4 of an inch. And so when you get through the first area, pull it through, and you can see how it's coming through. You're going to feed it all the way around in that same fashion. Okay. So I fed this all the way through the top. Now I'm getting ready to pull it through. So here's my end, and so what I'm going to do is just gently pull this together, and it'll create the little gathers. You know, you want to be gentle with this. So like I said, gently pull it together and closing up this gap that's up here. And if you put too much stuffing into it, it might affect the gathering capability. So, okay, we're going to just hold that tight. And see, what I'm going to do now is put the stem of the pumpkin in here, something like this. Okay. Okay. When I get that in there, when you think you're close, see, this opening will also be filled in with leaves and with a bow that I'm going to put up there. So I'm going to go ahead and say I like the size, or this opening, and I'm going to knot it really good like that. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to wrap this cord around that stem. It'll help hold it in place as well. And it doesn't have to be in the direct center, but it's pretty close right now. Okay. So what I could also do is to hold that together so it stays is use a little hot glue to hold that in place around that string. Okay. And that'll hold it in place. And then next thing I'm going to do is I have some leaves that I thought would look nice for the pumpkin. They're viney type leaves, so I'm going to attach those and maybe get some of that hot glue on there as well to hold it down. Okay. And I'll put 2 sets of leaves. See how these leaves were? They're viney leaves, and so I wanted to go and to cover that center section, basically. You know, once you get that center section closed. Another thing that I found works really well is I just got a little glue there, but we're going to peel that off later after it dries a little bit more. So you're going to try to form your pillow. You know, make sure that you get a nice distribution of a shape to your pumpkin, and then you're going to shape it really nice. Then you're going to put some of this raffia fiber. You know, you're going to attach it. So whenever you determine the front of your pumpkin, so I'm going to say the front of my pumpkin is right about here. So I'm going to trim away this thread because I'm done with it. And then I'm going to apply the raffia right there. So I'm also going to glue that to that top edge of the stem. Okay, and so here we are. We got our pumpkin completed. Now, one other thing I was going to mention was, and you're going to hold that in place so that it doesn't move right now too, and you know, you got a really pretty pumpkin. And it goes with your other 2 pumpkins we made earlier. So it's a nice little contrast that you got going for them. Okay, but this one we just made was using decorative stitches. Now, one thing, I was going to mention this earlier too, and I keep forgetting and get sidetracked, but you could use cinnamon sticks as well for your stems. So I hope you have enjoyed this particular project. And, you know, I just, you know, if you'd like to go ahead and click the subscribe button and also the like button. And make sure you tell all your friends about it as well. So until next time, you know, here at Phil's Sewing, you know, it's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed the project. Thank you.